On today's show, An End of an Era, we visit a Minnesota icon slowly giving way to time. And we'll meet a Minnesota farmer who's taken his environmental practices to the fields. When farming and the great outdoors team up, just see what can happen.
And we're making wild king salmon.
Laura Shera is back in the kitchen trying out some new recipes for great tasting salmon. And our Minnesota Bound Classic this week takes a look back at an invasive species that also happens to be a tasty appetizer, if you can catch them. Those stories and more next.
Minnesota Bound. Brought to you by Minnesota's Select GMC dealers.
Hi everybody, Raven and I welcome you to the show. You know, summer in Minnesota means mosquitoes, lakes, parks, resorts. Some of those resorts are very historic and they have a story to tell. And Bill Shirk has found one.
Time is a funny thing. What it protects, it also takes. Along Voyageurs National Park, Arrowhead Lodge sits a pillar, a Paul Bunyan-like structure somehow stuck in time.
It's an old building with a lot of character, a lot of stories. If these walls could talk, we'd hear some really cool stories.
Sally McRoberts' family owns and runs Arrowhead, a Lake Kabetogama icon since the 1920s. Sally's husband, David, still remembers his first walk through the front door.
Once we were here, I'd say it took about a half hour. And within that half hour, I knew this is it. I told the real estate agent, I said, this is it, we'll take it. You'll take it? This is it. This is exactly what I want.
That was 14 years ago. David, Sally, and Sally's parents have been hard at work ever since. Keepers of this family-run, family-friendly resort. 11 cabins, and the main attraction, the main lodge.
Loggers built this. A lot of sweat equity was put into this, and you can tell.
Basically, this building has stayed the original pine timber frame. It is as original as it was built.
Sally's dad might be self-appointed historian. Larry loves the old stories from Arrowhead's heydays.
These are the girls that cleaned the cabins. Arrowhead had a real reputation back in those days of having some very nice cabin girls.
It's sad to think that these lodges and all this history are slowly disappearing. Well, I don't want this one to disappear.
Which is why rainy days are a hard Northwoods pill to swallow. See, the loggers built Arrowhead using a log design native to western states.
It was almost like a pyramid. If you took a pyramid and lopped it off halfway.
A good design for dry climates, not so hot in northern Minnesota.
All this is wet. All that's wet.
That's why the bottom logs are in such bad shape. And once your bottom goes, then you start to sag.
The old lodge slowly gives way to time. A little more each season.
There are definitely some issues that need to be taken care of. And to be quite honest, it's pretty overwhelming.
Repair quotes top $500,000, money the family just doesn't have.
One of the builders even just kind of stopped and said, you know what, it's just too much. It's too expensive to fix. It's just probably not worth it.
And that may be the entire point of this story. It's the idea of taking a match to another piece of Minnesota history.
This represents decades of people coming up and family memories, and that's a big deal.
Jay Michaels has been a lodge guest since his college days. Now his daughter and his grandkids spend summers at Arrowhead. Like Jay says, it is a big deal.
If the building falls into itself, it's going to wind up looking like a Super 8 hotel. Though it'll be replaced with something that has no personality.
Who knew an old building could elicit such Minnesota emotion? A fix seems almost insurmountable, but maybe, just maybe, not impossible.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it can be done. There's people out there who know how to fix this place. It's just, a matter of finding that right person.
Yeah, I think it's doable. I might be nuts, but I think we can do this. I really do.
Arrowhead needs a Paul Bunyan-sized fix. But just think, what a Minnesota tale that would make.
If I could walk outside, I'd see these logs, all beautiful red, original. Oh, fabulous. Just fabulous.
Coming up, a farmer who takes his land back in time. We'll spill the beans on how he did it next.
Minnesota Bound, brought to you by Minnesota Select GMC Dealers, Connecticut, and by Starkey Hearing Technologies.
Welcome back. Up next, a story about a man who loved his land. You could say maybe he saved it.
These days, truly magical outdoor spots seem to slowly become the exception rather than the norm. Conservation of our prettiest places seemingly swept downstream. No wonder a small farm near the Iowa-Minnesota border long ago caught my attention.
Talk about a beautiful spot.
A place I have long dreamed of sleeping under the stars.
Tomorrow should be epic. Good night. How pretty is that?
Prairie Song Farm is the vision of Mike Osterholm, a Minnesota scientist by trade. Mike had a dream to take the old, worn corn farm back 200 years in time before plow ever met soil. Over a decade, a team of volunteers reintroduced the prairie, rehabbed the hillside savanna, and cleaned up both Waterloo and Brook creeks.
We didn't do this last 10 years to last for 10 years. We did the last 10 years to last forever.
Mike created a legacy, especially for people who fish streams. Just ask Mick Rosenau and John Crabb, two of Prairie Song's volunteers.
John and I are good fishing buddies, and we come up here together. It's a lot of fun.
Waterloo is home to brown trout and Iowa's native brook trout. Seems the stretch of water through Prairie Song has become an oasis, not just for anglers, but fish too.
That is a heck of a fish. I would love to get this one in. Come on, buddy. Woo! That is a beautiful fish. That's pretty good for this size stream. That's the best part of it right there. There he goes. You see, I'm ready to go home now.
I'm not.
Little box of treats. 3, 2, 1. And they wanted that one. Oh, look at that. Isn't that something?
Waterloo Creek's brown trout seemingly come easily to hand. Well, most of the time.
Really? We got a jumper. They're getting bigger. I mean, that is just a dandy Iowa trout.
Healthy water and healthy prairies produce bugs, lots of them. the very thing trout eat.
Mike's, with the help of his volunteers, have just created what used to be, really.
I had a lot of people who were very critical. Go read the internet postings for years about, what the hell was I doing here? I wasn't following the traditional Trout Unlimited approaches, etc. And, I obviously was sensitive to that. I listened to it, but I also had eyes and I had a brain that was based on science.
Seems his idea worked. Heck, the farm's once ditched tributaries have become a key refuge for Iowa's threatened strain of native brook trout. Just another layer in Prairie Song's legacy.
Isn't that something? It's overwhelming, the number of healthy fish in here. Proof that it works.
It's just heaven. It's Iowa. It's heaven.
Is finish it with a little bit of sauteed spinach and
Coming
corn
up,
together.
it's time to go wild in the kitchen with Laura Shera. And the menu this week, salmon with a little twist.
Closed captioning is brought to you by the Yard, premier manufacturers of maintenance-free outdoor patio furniture and accessories from recycled plastic.
Up next, time to go wild in the kitchen. Smells good. What's cooking, Laura?
Today we're getting really wild in the kitchen. We're here with Chef Paul from Fire Lake Grill House and Cocktail Bar, and we're making wild king salmon.
Nothing's more wild in the kitchen than fresh Alaskan wild salmon. We're gonna pair it with the fresh summer flavor of fresh corn. So the very first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make a corn broth. All you're gonna do is you're gonna take the knife and you're gonna run it right down the edge.
It's pretty easy.
Now, what we're gonna do is, there's still a lot of flavor left in this cob. So that's what we wanna start off with. So we just take the corn cob with some celery, put it down in a pot with just enough water to cover, and then we're gonna let it simmer for an hour, and that's where our corn broth begins. So I've just put a little bit of butter and about half the corn kernels, and we're gonna transfer that to a heavy bottom pot here, and then we're gonna strain. I'm gonna have you help. We're just gonna reduce this by half. So while this is cooking, let's go get our salmon ready for the grill.
Okay.
To the bowl here, we're gonna add a little bit of virgin olive oil. We're just gonna add a little touch of Dijon, okay? And then we're gonna add some dill to it, a little bit of black pepper, and a little bit of salt. Rub it fairly liberally on all sides of your salmon fillet. And as you can see, the liquid has reduced by about half.
Pour it right in the blender.
We're gonna add just a little pinch of cayenne pepper, gonna add a little pinch of black pepper, and a good helping of salt, a touch of cream, and away we go. Lay it on there, don't overcook it. You want to treat it like red meat. So this will probably take about 8 minutes. So let's go plate this salmon. The last thing we're gonna do is finish it with a little bit of sauteed spinach and corn together.
Once again, it's wildly delicious with some of our summer favorites.
Hi, I'm Rob Drieslein, Managing Editor of the Outdoor News Publications. The region's waterfowl hunters received some excellent news this month when they learned that North American duck numbers hit a record high in spring 2014. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service released its annual waterfowl breeding population and habitat survey this month, and the results bode well for hunting this fall. Conducted in May by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Canadian Wildlife Service, the survey puts the continent's 2014 duck breeding population at 49.2 million birds. That's the most since the survey began in 1955, and that's an 8% increase from 2013. Why all the ducks? Well, there's been a lot of water this spring across the so-called duck factory of the Dakotas in Prairie, Canada. And go figure, federal biologists rated nesting pond conditions across most of the region as excellent. Specific to Minnesota, the duck outlook isn't quite as rosy. Overall, duck numbers here actually are down 31% from a year ago, though Minnesota Department of Natural Resources biologists caution that weather and visibility could have affected spring survey results here. As for Canada geese, the DNR says there are 244,000 honkers in Minnesota, down just a stitch from the 250,000 we had last year. But as most Minnesotans probably have noticed, this spring's goslings handled the wet weather like champs, and DNR biologists expect a bumper year for goose production. The agency says the state will again hold an ultra-early season for Canada geese in August in west central Minnesota. That summer intensive harvest zone season runs August 9th to 24th, and that's in addition to the regular early Canada goose season, which begins September 6th. The 2014 duck opener should fall on September 27th, with Youth Waterfowl Day on September 13th. Though we're still waiting for the final word from the feds, we'll likely see a 6-bird bag for ducks. Should be a good season for North American waterfowl hunters. For complete information on how this fall's waterfowl seasons unfold, read the print edition of Outdoor News or check us out online at outdoornews.com. I'm Rob Drieslein.
Still ahead, our Minnesota-bound classic heads under the water to feature the rusty crayfish. Yes, it's an invasive species, but you know, a very tasty one too.
Minnesota Bound, brought to you by Jesse Treble Foundation Systems and Safe Basements Waterproofing, Radco Truck Accessories, Game Fair, and by Seven Clans Casino.
Time for our Minnesota-bound classic this week. It's about invasive species. You've all heard about those. But this story is about, well, one that's been around a long, long time. Up close and personal look at rusty crayfish. In search of Minnesota's monster of the lake. To find it, you ready your scuba gear and prepare to dive to the gloomy depths. Did somebody say lake monster? This is the rusty crayfish. It may not be a monster, but it is an alien creature that is spreading, largely unseen, in many of Minnesota's lakes and rivers. They're big, they're destructive, and they're thick.
And they're all pretty good size.
Dan Crone and his partner Gene Carlson have a DNR license to trap rusty crayfish out of Minnesota's Woman Lake chain, a chain that also connects to Leech Lake and Leech to the Mississippi River. Turns out lake monsters also are tasty.
The claws have got a lot of meat in them, the tails.
However, the alien crayfish has not been good for Minnesota. Exotic species experts say the alien crayfish destroys native crayfish.
All the crayfish we've caught out here, I myself personally have never saw Marcellus or blue claw in the traps. They're all the rusties. So they've pretty much replaced the native species that were native to the lake.
Rusty crayfish also may reduce certain fish populations, studies show. In addition, the rusty, with its big claws, will cut down valuable aquatic vegetation.
I've been on the lake, probably 20 years now, and I've noticed through those years that the weed beds on the main lake here have been continually disappearing. And right now, you're hard-pressed to find a cabbage weed out here. From what I understand, the rusty crayfish are responsible for that.
At the moment, DNR officials say there are no effective ways to control or eliminate the rusty once it's established in a lake system.
It kind of upsets the whole natural balance of things that, you know, we're intended to be here by introducing exotic species.
Maybe the lesson is this: our ability to upset nature has finally reached the bottom. Rusty crayfish. The only good thing about those, they're delicious to eat. That about does it for us. Remember, introduce a kid to the great outdoors. I'm Ron Scher, and of course the star of the show here, waiting, I think, for a kiss, is Raven.
Transportation provided by Premier Transportation. Call 1-800-899-7433. For more information on these stories and more, catch us on the web at mnbound.com.